What's going on, everyone? My name is isaacmijangosBIZ, and in this video, let's go over the flip camera that every millennial wanted, but probably never got. This camera has a very fond memory inside my brain as I walked through Walmart, and every camera was big, clunky, gray, and took in these things called VHS tapes. This was a small, compact, little thing that took off with immense popularity in 2006 as Pure Digital Technologies, a company by Cisco, started selling it. Now, before that, there were no iPhones. Really bizarre to say, there were no great cameras, but this camera, I believe, took off because of how it looked and the way that it was advertised, and this beautiful little noise that it made really caught my attention. Now, with the power of nostalgia, I remembered this camera and I decided to purchase it on eBay. And I gotta say, I would recommend this camera, but not for the reasons that you might think, because of the specs or the beautiful image, but because of the amount of flaws. Let's get started. We always have to talk about the price, and this is a really inexpensive camera, as it originally priced at like $150 plus tax when it was first released, but now you can get it for about $15 to $30 depending on the generation and the amount of memory that you want. I personally went with the latest generation that they sold at 8 GB, so I have surprisingly 2 exact hours of recording time, which is kind of crazy to say. It records at HD 720p with a nice H.264 codec. The camera also takes in proprietary battery, but Cisco is nice enough to allow us to take in AAA batteries, which is the ones that I personally use, and it's given me a pretty good amount of recording time. Of course, it'll vary because these are no longer in circulation. The outside build quality is really cheap, very 2000s in terms of its plastic. The cheapest part to me is this front plate that covers up the batteries. I could easily snap it with just one hand. The one place where I was really impressed was the flip noise. I've done this a bunch of times, and it still sounds very brand new. The other place that I was very astounded at was how well the sound is captured and everything sounds. It didn't say what focal length the lens is at, but I'm pretty sure it's like a good 35 to 40 because it's pretty tight, and it has digital zoom built into it. So you'll see some of the footage right here of me zooming in and out. So of course, we got to talk about the footage, analyze it a little bit, talk about why I'm recommending it. As you can see from the footage, this is no 8K Monstro raw footage sensor. The biggest thing that I noticed were the amount of flaws that the camera had, this sort of VCR effect that everybody tries to replicate in post now. 4 things really stood out to me: highlight saturation, autofocus, and in-body image stabilization. In-body image stabilization is non-existent. Autofocus, non-existent. It's really bizarre as I record into this camera and it has perfect autofocus tracking my face. The saturation is pushed up like crazy. I mean, just look at this footage of the man running. Pumped up like 50% for no reason. The highlights are completely blown out. They're nowhere near savable. The reason I recommend this camera is because of how simple and how little friction there is. Cameras now are really great. There's a little to no margin of error. The autofocus is amazing even on your iPhone, and with a properly lit room and a great external mic, you can start a YouTube channel like nothing. What this camera really reminded me of was what cameras were back then, which is it's not about getting the perfect smooth autofocus tracked on the face shot that's going to be thrown into Premiere with some more warped stabilization to get the most beautiful smooth pan shot of all time when you're recording your family. Cameras then were about recording as it was. The biggest example I can give you is just look at the footage that your parents recorded when you were a kid. Your parents don't come in with in-body image stabilization. They don't know what the exposure triangle is, and everything's probably super shaky. So you should probably replace your parents and upgrade them first and foremost. There's just a beauty to the amount of flaws that are in those videos, right? And I mean, at 720p, it might have stood the test of time in 2013, but now we just think 4K, 8K, and 10K. The camera to me is really about the reduction of friction. There's no notifications, there's no OS built into this, which means that I can get directly into what I need to do, which is record video. And with the lack of image stabilization, it's crazy to see the signals that my brain was sending to my hands, trying to keep everything steady, just recording everything as it was. There was no software getting in the way of that. You can see it as I capture the flowers or I capture the dog walking. Everything is there, all the flaws are there, and it's really satisfying to see those flaws in there. The LCD is also really small and really tiny, but you get sucked right into it as you try to capture every fleeting second the best that you can. Where I think it really does well is when you bring it out with people. It's really bizarre to see people being more afraid of the thing that they carry in their pockets than this little tiny thing, which is more pre-designated to be a film camera and capture stuff. The form factor is really great. It's probably about the same size as an iPhone XR. The level of entry to this is inexpensive, and there's more flaws, which means that you have to think about the shot, think about everything, and put it together. And even then, the footage doesn't look as perfect as it should be. With any basic software or any basic computer, you could edit this and create a nice Instagram highlight. This camera also needs to be revived, in my personal opinion, and that's sort of what we're going to be talking about today. And Cisco, if you need to hire me, let me know, because I'd be more than happy to help you revive this camera, because I see a really great vlogging market for this because of its form factor and the advancement in technology. First and foremost, the reason that this camera should be called a flip camera is because it would have a new flip screen with touchscreen in order to focus. And the most important thing to get with this camera is probably the autofocus, so people can vlog. Also a better lens, a 28 to maybe 75 millimeter lens with digital zoom or optical zoom, just depending on the preference that we have in the hardware that is available. A hot shoe mount for an external mic and a mic jack put into this. We would get rid of the proprietary HDMI port and replace it with USB-C, and this should have external storage, 16, 32 to 64 gigabytes, but it would also have expandable storage with micro SD cards. None of that proprietary stuff, nobody likes it. It should be rechargeable with a possibility of it having AAA batteries because they're really easy to find. The front red light should be replaced with LCD, so it looks brighter and it's more easily noticeable. In terms of the operating system should stay about the same, with the addition of Bluetooth to transfer it to an application, and mic controls so you can control the level, the gains, and everything in between when it comes to sound. I see a lot of potential for this camera and its revival and what it could bring to the vlogging market, because I think it's just really fun. It's a great camera to pick up, before Kylie Jenner decides to blow it up or something and say this is the best camera ever. That would be great for me, but not for the market, right? It's a really fun camera. I really like it. And I'm always trying to fill in that gap between cell phones and DSLRs and just kind of have something that feels really, really unique. Trying to hunt down certain cameras that are going to do that. And I think this is one of those cameras that does that really, really well. And I think it's just a ton of real estate that Cisco is not getting at when they're not reviving this camera in 2020. But of course, those are just my personal thoughts and opinions. And let me know what you think. Were you able to afford the flip camera when you were a kid? Make sure to listen to my podcast. Sadly, no co-host this week. At the end of the day, I thank you so much for your time and your attention. My name is Isaac Mijangos, and I'll catch you in the next one.